Good morning, everyone. We're having feedback. Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of Thursday, December 7th, 2023. My name is Ian Morrison. I would like to recognize that the CBRD is on the unceded territories of the Cowichan, Malahat, Subasit, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Layaxan, Paquichan, Ditidat, and Pachidat nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. I turn to Ms. Boyd for number one.
Thank you, Chair. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any additions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries.
Thank you, Chair. I don't see anyone in the gallery today for public input period, and we can move on to number 6, reports. R1, report from the Finance Division regarding 2024 draft budgets, electoral area.
Welcome, Ms. Bowen. Take her away.
There's really no presentation for any of the reports. They're just to, information is in the back. Ian is here because there was 3 attachments to this report from the Building and Bylaw Division as to why they're asking for more than the 3.5%. All budgets were based off of the 3.5%, and then ones that had attachments were ones that require more than 3.5% to maintain levels. So if there's any questions.
Okay, so thanks. So let's maybe figure out a way how we're going to do this that makes sense, because due to the length of yesterday's meeting, I didn't get a full read on everything yesterday. I think that the budgets that are set at 3.5% or that have met the 3.5% target don't really need much in the way of look-see or oversight, unless there's specific individual ones pertaining to an electoral area that if someone has some changes in mind. But I think for the most part, you will have communicated with staff, or your director will have communicated with staff, and we should be able to handle those in fairly short order. I think we should take a look at the business cases for those in excess. I know that in what I have read, I've found a couple of things that I think would be potential reductions in requisition, and we can have a quick look at those. Don't know that I remember them offhand, but I'm sure I will when we get down into them. So for the most part, I think we can focus on the business case ones. I'll probably need staff's help in locating them in our package. Director Abbott.
I don't want to dwell, and as Ms. Bowen knows, I am completely confused by grant and aid. And I look at the grant and aid for some areas have 0 in 23, and it increases in 24. In my own case, mine stays at around $9,800 over 2 years. And I look at some areas that have 25K in 24, 23, and it's going to 30K. I would love and welcome a workshop if time permits. This will be long approved, but I'd love a workshop in the new year to go over what are grant and aids, how do we work them, how can we increase them, because it's one of the few tools and attributes that we can go back to our residents and work with our residents. And I can't claim to be new to this game anymore, although Director Bart Martman uses that still. But that is one overarching observation. And then into building inspection and enforcement, I hear and I read that we're below 3.5%, which is encouraging. But when we throw in the maintenance of software, it looks like we need a 10% increase year over year just to maintain the software. And that perplexes me. Either we don't have enough money to cover software, we're not charging enough in fees, or we're going to have to dip into, in some cases, large reserves. And again, this is an overarching comment for the rest of the session. There are some reserves that are healthy, and I understand that we don't dip into reserves as a rule, but between the min-max allowances, why have those reserves gotten to be so large? But generally, I just see the 3.5% mandate was lived up to, but then all these supplementals get us into any number. It can be 18 to 43% over that 3.5%. So it's a bit perplexing.
So there's, on the grants and aids, you can look at this from a couple of perspectives. Staff will give you the, chapter and verse of that we have a policy and all of that, or perhaps we can have a discussion after the fact or after the meeting, and we can do a workshop, because grant and aid is one of those very few things that are they're board approved, but under the direction of the area director, and they are very important tools. And some use them and some don't. So, yeah, we can discuss that later. And a number of the things that you brought up are, I'm hoping that we will be able to have discussions, because I have concerns about some of the software costs, and there's also other things you mentioned make a lot of sense, and we can get into those. Director Mertman.
Thank you. And, just from an overview perspective too, and certainly starting with grant and aid, Area H has, as far as I'm aware, never had a grant and aid request and from the director. And so one of the things, it's if you get to a workshop, it's going to be a philosophical issue. And I know in my community that there's a high sense of community contributions to each other, and we work to support each other, but not through having TAC requisition. There's other ways to do it. So that being said, I do see other directors doing some very valuable work with grant and aids. So I totally respect whichever way a director may want to go. I am interested in just putting a topic out there, and that's about the use of reserves. And I've been wrestling with this over the last few years about, do you go into reserves? Do you use them for a short period of time and then, have to draw back next year and have a higher requisition? I think it's really looking at the long-term outlook of what the economy is going to be like. If you are seeing an economy that is going through a short retraction and going to be, looking rosy in a year or two, I can see drawing out of reserves. But if you're going to have a longer-term economy retraction, and I think we're facing that. I don't know if you've read anything about the CMHC, Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation, put out a document about what mortgages are faced with over the next 2 years. They're expecting 2 million mortgages to be renewed. And the renewal rate of a $500,000 mortgage put out by the CMHC is going to change the monthly payment from increasing it by $950. This is for a $500,000 mortgage. So they are saying that in the next couple of years, we are looking at some fairly significant impacts to our property tax, our property owners. And I would say this is something that isn't a short-term issue, that we have to have reserves going forward. And so I'm really looking at it from a perspective of, we need to keep reserves comfortable. Those are our backups for our programs, and be consistent with that use, rather than trying to be sort of patchwork. Anyway, that's just my viewpoint going forward, and why I think it's important to really pay attention to what we're asking our taxpayers to pay, but also making sure that we give them the comfort that our programs are going to be solid and paid for. Thank you.
So that's great information, and I think that that's probably a really good place to start. And I don't know what Ms. Bowen had in mind other than to answer questions, but I would suggest that maybe a quick review of our reserve fund policy and what the expectations are around, similar to what we just discussed at the whiteboard over there. And I may even wander over there and point to it, but do you have the reserve fund policy at hand? And we can certainly take a moment or two until you do, and please.
Okay, through the chair to Director Martman. So we do have an operating reserve policy currently standing. So if the operating, when we set them at a 2-month max, so like 2 to 4 months. So for a function, we want to keep funds in there for a 2 to fund. If something went down, had to go out or something happened, that we would have money to run the facility or the program or whatever for 2 to 4 months. Anything over that, according to the policy, is to be moved into a capital reserve to save for capital purchases for future. Finance, just due to the nature of being short-staffed, we haven't been able to do that this year. We will be going through those reserves and checking to see how the balance is and moving stuff to capital reserves. So there'll be less in the operating reserves at the end of December because we will be moving stuff over. There are some functions within the policy that are exempt from having to have that min-max, just to the nature of what they are. And we've added a few more that can have a little bit higher than their max, which I think we've made a change to bylaw because of legal stuff, so that we were able to hold more in their operating reserve than what they normally would. So it is one of the policies that we are looking at to see if there's any changes that can be made, but it is a pretty good policy in place. So we do try to keep reserves in there. And like you say, the reserves should not be used for ongoing operating. One-time expenses, consultants, or if they're going to purchase something like computers or something, or at the fire departments, they need to purchase some new equipment, then it's a one-time purchase, done, finished. It won't affect, because they just need it for this year. You don't have to do your requisition increase. You get the equipment, and then next year, your requisition stays the same. So that's the purpose of the operating reserve.
And just in addition to that, there's, we had this discussion, I think, last year when all of you were brand new about whether or not there's an actual bounce to dipping into reserves for, to reduce requisition. And I think it's been clearly demonstrated that if it's an ongoing expense, you're definitely going to have a bounce, because you have to not only replace what was in reserve, but you have to tax for it in the subsequent year. Ms. Miles Wilson has just reminded me that we are still in a really substantial infrastructure deficit. So there will be times where we see maybe very healthy operating reserves that haven't yet been tripped over into the capital reserve fund, that our capital reserve account that may be there for very specific reasons. And I think we can sort of do these as one-offs as we go through. This is pretty technical stuff. I'm also going to raise the issue that Director Wilson raised last year, and that is that doing budgeting at this time of year is there's a little bit of hope and faith involved in that we haven't come to year end yet. So do we know what, if any, surpluses will be available? So we know that our policy is that those surpluses go immediately into operating reserve. We don't know what that number will be, but we could have operating reserves that do actually trip over the 4-month maximum that we will hold. So the question will be, we don't know that number, but we may actually have some wiggle room there as a result. We may not want to turn that into the capital reserve immediately, so there may be some flexibility there to reduce some expenditures. And I talked with Ms. Bowen earlier about, a couple of examples of how you do that, and we can very likely get into that in fairly short order. Director Segal, yeah, we're in open. Director Segal.
Thank you. I've missed a whole bunch leading up to this, but just on what was just talked about, where when the operation reserve is over that 4 months and it goes into capital reserve, that's kind of been our makeshift asset management plan, but now we have a proper asset management plan coming. So I'm wondering if eventually we'll have like requirements we should have in capital reserve as well, in the same way that we have recommendations around the 2 to 4 mark for the operational reserves.
Ms. Bowen. Ms. Bowen.
Through the chair to Director Segal. So operating reserves you can't tax for, so operating reserves are just like, it's the surplus that you have at the end of the year, you cannot tax for it. You can tax for capital reserves. So if you want to put money away for future assets, and which is the asset management, asset retirement obligations that are going to be coming as well, you putting money away for that as a future, you can tax for that. And we used to, and we've seen that dwindle down because that is the first place that we cut to get your requisitions down as we cut from that. But then now we're seeing where we are with this deficit of not having any money to replace stuff, and then we have to borrow, or we have to see if we can get a grant and see if we can go this way, which then brings your requisition back up where our reserves are not healthy enough to cover what we have out there right now.
Please do, Ms. Miles Wilson.
So just to follow up on what Ms. Bowen just said as well, is that as we mentioned in previous presentations in the past few weeks about asset management, is that we'll be moving into more of a financial exercise around asset management with updated condition assessments on our infrastructure. We would be setting financial targets for capital reserves. That's a next step. So we would be basing that on kind of like the life cycle and the capital renewal requirements for each asset group. And so, yeah, it moves into a situation where it becomes a financial exercise, and that will be in the not too distant future as we have a full rollout of the program. So I guess the advice would be to conservatively look at your reserves, because we have a program that we want to fully implement.
And not wanting to, throw too much into the pot here, but one of the things that we will have to contemplate, and I don't know what the new financial software and some of the programs that we're bringing on board, but I've seen examples of how asset management is presented to boards and councils and the public. And there are examples where it can literally be put on the screen as you're doing budget, and there can be a value. I don't want to use the word percentage, but there can be a value that can be prescribed to asset management as per function. And so that it's almost separated out, but included in your reporting as you're doing your budgeting, and that can be very helpful. But we're not there yet. There's also different ways of approaching, whether you do an equal amount each year, or there's different ways of approaching it. But for the purposes of today's exercise, we've got a fair bit of material ahead of us. It doesn't have to be all that complex, but I think it's important that if there's anyone else has any thoughts, concerns, areas that they're unfamiliar with, any overarching comments that they'd like to make, now would probably be a good time to make them. If look around the room, Director Wilson, anyone else? Director Nicholson. No, Nicholson.
I just was wondering about supplementals. So this is not, we're not next week's supplementals. Okay.
What I think we should go through the business cases. I was just looking at this in the way of the groupings. They make sense, and thank you to staff for doing this. So if we turn our attention to item number 1, does anybody want to talk about the library? It's a big number. Nothing we can do about it. So, does anybody want to talk about the library? Director Segal.
I personally love libraries, and having young kids, it's an incredible resource, and I take advantage of it lots in Mill Bay.
Okay.
We did review their budget.
Okay. Yeah, it is what it is. So if we want to, where's our first business case in section R1?
M.
M. Animal control. Okay, let's get this opened up here. Yeah, I just, for some reason, why is it not opening? Hang on. Blink. Get out of that, go into, oh, there we go. All right. Animal control. Just one thing that, this may be a pet peeve of mine, but I generally like to have the budget open to the particular function, so I have to, will you be going into the finer details of, or will you be referring to the budget during any of your
No, this is
remarks?
just going to be one main, there'll be a main theme to all three of these budgets, actually.
Okay, hang on, I gotta just get it opened up here. Finance, service. 2024 budget, draft budget, okay. Mr. McDonald.
So-
M, yes, animal control.
Yeah, so this is a good start because this one, the number is big because it looks like 42%, but it's really only $22,000.
Right.
So what this is to do with the animal control contract and strictly the contract. So this contract was approved by the board, and so this cost was anticipated. So there was no way to stay within 3.5%. So something that's totally out of the department's control, and that's why we're requesting that the increase be 42% and $22,886.
Director Abbott?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. McDonald, I noticed reference that it would be 25K higher if you weren't increasing the dog fee. Is there anywhere else to raise money, or I guess with both this department and then the next one you're going to bring up, it's along the theme I was saying before. We're going to constantly be asking for more money because we don't have fees that are going to cover this. Is that how things work at the CVRD?
Through the chair, yes. So these three budgets that you're going to look at first, they're unique budgets. They're heavily reliant on permit fees, and those are unpredictable permit fees. There's no way to predict at the beginning of the year. In fact, when we do these budgets, they're very difficult budgets to do, and you're going to see in the next one where this will be very hard to do. So we don't have a crystal ball. We can only try to anticipate. Now, animal control is one of the more constant ones and steady ones that we can actually almost predict, probably within a few $1,000s. And I've noticed over the last maybe even 10, 15 years, we have kind of stayed within a window. And now this is a significant increase. This $10 per dog license fee, that is hopefully going to generate 25,000, but that's what we're anticipating. There may be a shortfall there as well, depending on people see this increase and choose not to get dog licenses. So you run a balance. I mean, we could have upped it to $20 increase. Might have seen less people get dog licenses. So you're always running a balance by your fee cost and hoping that the people will do the right thing and get their licenses.
And he brings up a really valid point in that responsible dog owners will buy dog licenses. And as a regular participant at the dog park, I would have to say that we're lucky if half of the dogs that are at the dog park actually have licenses. And one of the arguments is often the cost. And quite often, people don't see the value until their dog goes missing. And so we have to be very cognizant of the fact that as we raise fees, we may have less participation by the dog owning community out there, so.
Supplemental, if I
Director
may.
Abbott?
Hopefully we could, with the enforcement coming up, invoke more enforcement and assess more fines.
Well, I think Mr. McDonald would prefer to go onto the education side and carrot versus stick, but we'll have to see how this works out. So with that, any further discussion around this? And I should ask, how are we wanting to do this? Just discuss each one? Are we wanting a motion on all the business case ones, or do we want to just go through, discuss, have a general sense, and then adopt each or recommend to the board each of the sections? How would you like to do that, Ms. Boyd? Okay. So we'll do them as a block. So is everybody comfortable with what we've just discussed in animal control? Director Nicholson?
I would just say I would like to talk about bylaw enforcement.
Okay, well, that would be the next, is that the next one up?
320 would be next.
320, building inspection is next.
And I've got these in order. And,
Good.
That may help.
Because I think they appear in our agenda in order. Next one. Oops, live meeting, building inspection, fire away.
Okay, so again, there was a theme. Now, this is a different contract. So again, it was a board-approved program. We didn't know at the time when I first did budget and trying to stick to the 3.5% that what the maintenance fee was going to be. So the maintenance fee was out of our control again. Once that was in, I had already sharpened the pencil as far as I could go without cutting the service. So that's why, in this case, I'm asking for, I think it's $39,714. This will be a theme on the next budget as well, because it's being split between the two of them. So it's $39,000 each. I just want to go further. I had a comment here I wanted to make because I've been listening to about operating reserves, and it may look that building, it actually has a fairly substantial operating reserve. Why that's very important is I talked earlier about how we're reliant on fees and they're unpredictable. Where we're sitting currently right now is almost a $200,000 deficit in fees that will have to be made up by operating reserve at the end of the year. So it is a big roller coaster that we sit on, with some years that we come out way ahead and some years way behind. Unfortunately, this is going to be one of those years where we'll be dipping into operating reserve at the end of the year. So that's why sometimes that funds look like they're available for other things. In this case, we definitely almost need something that goes beyond the 4 months, because there are years where this happens. I'd also like to say that something else that would be important to understand is that 3.5% in this budget was $8,617. Wages alone, wages and benefits alone were $54,000. I had to absorb that in the budget somewhere. So a lot of stuff has been cut. We are really already at bare bones, and there's really nothing else to cut other than you are looking at cutting the service.
Director Abbott.
I got ahead of myself, sorry.
So, Mr. McDonald, Ms. Bowen, this is one of these that I looked at, and we have a final year's payment of a short-term debt, I believe. Just trying to find it here. It's just a few thousand, but, you know, I look at that. So that'll be a final year payment. I'm assuming we're requisitioning for it. And so, you know, it's not a large amount, but I would say that we are in a healthy position, despite the fact that you're going to be taking a couple $100,000 out to meet deficit. Are you forecasting that same sort of level of fee revenue, and we can be looking at, again, a deficit in the upcoming year? Because I would be, if we were, and I'm not suggesting we go line by line, but there's a few $1,000s that is going to be covered by requisition that could very easily be covered by operating reserve. So just thoughts on the upcoming forecast of revenues and whether or not something like that could be done.
To the chair, to answer your question, so when I was forecasting forward, because I forecasted back in the summer, I've actually forecasted looks like almost 40,000 that we will be gaining. So that, based on what happened this year, that's almost a $250,000 hit next year. I'm just hoping that building picks up. I mean, we're forecasting with a housing crunch that there will be more people building. We're just looking at what developments are going on. But we also face that money is expensive right now. So now what we're starting to see, I mean, it's really unusual year where there is a real high demand for housing. However, developers aren't spending the money and other homeowners aren't spending the money. So we can't predict what will happen in the next year, whether interest rates will come down or not. So again, very difficult, almost a year and a half, is actually trying to predict what will happen. I suspect at some point it will pick up, but we don't know when.
Okay. Ms. Bowen, the use of operating reserves in this case for reduction of single-year costs?
That's right down here. That was like 8. I was doing that.
Sorry, just trying to find how much it is.
3,000.
So we could look at having that change from out of operating reserves. It's very minimal, though. It's only like 3,000.
Well,
600, yeah. It's small, I know.
I think we're looking for reductions in requisition everywhere we can, especially when we've got numbers like this. So, yeah, that was an example that I found in the reading of the documentation, so. Director Martman.
Yeah, and just, I brought my lunchbox today because that, to remind me, even small things make a difference. So that's what it's there for, in case you were wondering.
No, we weren't.
Any other questions for Mr. McDonald or Ms. Bowen? Director Abbott?
We're going to move on to the next.
Well, I just want to make sure everybody's happy
Yeah.
with this, because we're going to be considering all
The
of these
next one's
as a
simpler.
block.
That was the
Okay.
complicated one.
Just
Uh,
before we move on.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
yes, go ahead.
So the request is to reduce, transfer from operating reserves to pay the debt and then reduce the requisition for that.
Yes,
Okay.
fine 0.75%, yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. And, you know, if there were other things that pop out to you, like, it would be a fool's errand for us to start doing that here, but open to that sort of, you know, mining of reduction wherever you can.
No, through your chair, that's a good catch, but the rest of the ones they're going to be the same thing. That's
Okay.
the only one that will not be there next year, so that's about the only opportunity that you'd find there.
Right, okay, thank you. Next item is function, what number? 328, okay. Bylaw enforcement,
So this one's a bit simpler in that it is just the cost of the program. Now, in order to reach the 3.5%, I did look at cutting the legal budget. So if you want me to stay, you did ask to cut wherever we could. So I did cut that legal budget to stay on 3.5, but I did bring this report forward anyway, because that would bring us down to, I think it's $35,000, $35,287, which is very short in what we spend every year. So that will really hamper the ability for bylaw to go forward. And in these coming years, I can see that we may need more. And this is another one where I had worked with the previous CFO to increase beyond just 4 months, because it's almost ends up becoming like a piggy bank, where some year we can't predict which legal battles we're going to fight. And we're not going to spend 200,000 every year, but then there might be the odd year where we're going to spend a large amount, and other years we don't. So I tried to come up with a number that I see as typically every year as our steady base, not knowing what we might anticipate. So in the operating reserve, there's monies available to go after certain legal battles, but for the most part are just average annual and works out to about $70,000. So we're going to be about half of that, should you choose to have us stick to 3.5%.
Director Nicholson, you wanted to comment on this budget.
Thank you. I don't want to comment as much as I know in bylaw enforcement, we had the bylaw enforcement review, and we've hired someone as a new staff person, and we have always talked about increasing education, and in particularly important areas like riparian and lakes shore stuff. And I haven't been sort of updated on where we're at with that plan and a work plan, and presumably we're doing the budget. It would be nice to understand what we're going to be able to do with that before we start talking about supplementals, right?
Absolutely. Supplements tomorrow, maybe.
Ms. Chirolf.
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Nicholson. I think it's important to recognize that while the draft strategic plan was in development for quite a while, it's just recently been sort of acknowledged, accepted, and so staff will be developing a work plan based on the direction of the board. And we'll come back to you with plans around bylaw enforcement. Okay.
Director Nicholson.
So I guess, does that mean that we'll have to wait for a plan in 2024 before there'll be sort of new stuff happening as we had planned
I can speak to that.
in 2025?
Actually, we're well underway, and Mr. Harris has showed me a lot of stuff that he's already created. That we've already been working on, working with our communications group to develop new educational materials. We're trying to get some already out on our website and through social media, so this is well underway already. But we're also looking, I haven't seen the strategic plan yet to see if there's some specific focus areas, but I'm sure that as we're going forward, we'll find an area that you've discussed, or you're going to give us direction that we will focus on.
Okay, and I guess the other question I have is, have we filled back, I know Rob Harris was successful at that position, so have we backfilled his job yet? Or is there?
It is
what
posted
is-
right
what-
now.
Okay, so is.
And I
is
have
there
a
gonna
temporary
be-
person in the position, so
Okay.
we still have a full complement of bylaw officers.
I'm just shocked to hear that every member of staff hasn't fully memorized our brand-new corporate strategic plan at this point.
Working on it. I haven't even seen it yet.
Yeah, thanks for that, and great questions, and I think that, like, we're eagerly anticipating the new system for, what's it
Bylaw
called again?
Adjudication.
Bylaw
Yes.
adjudication, thank you.
And that's, you'll see a report, if you wanted to know again, that Director Nielsen has been asking about what Rob Harris is working on. That is one of the things, he has a report just about ready to go. We will either be in January or early February, so you will get a report very soon on that as well.
So in anticipating, so I guess that's kind of where, and I hear what Director Nicholson's saying, are we resourcing that now in this budget and or will there be additional supplementals? Are we looking at the following year?
We're trying to keep that within this budget. We realize that we're on a tight budget, and we're trying to resource as much in-house so that we don't have to go external. So far, we've been able to do it.
Director Nicholson?
So that is really where I'm going,
Yeah.
because it'll be hard to make a decision on the supplemental without understanding what you're going to be able to do in your
Yeah.
existing budget.
Okay,
If I can,
Yep.
this is not, I know that we'll be doing supplementals next week, but in that supplemental, there will be no effect on requisition. That will be, it's anticipated to do that all through operating reserve, and that is looking at a dedicated person for a fairly specific project.
right, short-term rentals, our favorite topic. Director Abbott?
Quick question, soil permit fees, what does that cover? And can your department be increasingly creative in finding other things to charge fees for?
Very good question, and we could be here for a while.
Too funny.
So, the first iteration of our soil bylaw did open up for more ability for people to get permits. The second version that was approved has really put a restriction on the amount of people it could get, and we actually were relying on those permit fees. And it's anticipated, I can see another year, but that's one thing that will happen in the 2025 budget. Fiscally, I'm going to have to look at where that's going. We made our target this year. I didn't think we would. Happily, I can say that we actually made it by, we actually exceeded it, which I didn't expect. But I'm anticipating that we'll hopefully hit the same target next year. But 2025, if the bylaw doesn't change, it's anticipated that that will become less and less over time.
What is a why do people take out a soil permit?
It's a requirement. What you did, though, is that where you could get what we call a Type C, and these are where we generate the most permit fees from, are very restrictive where you can get a Type C, where before they weren't.
There's a long history of
Yes.
this that we don't want to get into
Yeah.
right now, but suffice to say, we knew when some changes were made that there would be a really big impact on revenues, and I think that's come to bear. I'm delighted to hear that you've met targets,
Yeah.
but I think that would be an appropriate discussion at another time. Director Martman?
Thank you, and I was just looking, and thanks for the work, because this is not easy to scrape the bottom of the barrel, so to speak. But I am looking at the line item for consultants, and maybe you can speak a little bit about how that, because I think you're budgeting for $6,000 this year.
Yes.
And yet it's, as of last year, it was budgeted for 244,000, but previous to that, it was still 30 or 40,000, so
I can,
maybe speak a little bit.
yes, I can, actually.
Yeah.
Through the chair. So don't look at the 240,000, because that was actually from the approved, through Mr. Rolfe, for the land management software. So that's kind of skews that number. I think the previous one I had was about 25,000. What that for, and that will go back to Director Martman, or not Director, I think from last night when we said Director Hillary. Question soil. So what we did is we, a lot of those consultant fees are for our own consultant when we're reviewing a Type C permit. So in anticipating of fewer type C permits, we were able to lower that 25,000 down to 6, but we still anticipate the odd one. We need some money there just in case. So we want to verify when we get those applications that we have somebody qualified to look at those and help us approve them, because we don't have the knowledge in order to do that.
Alrighty, I've sort of gone over this one, and I think the key in this is we have an operating reserve fund recommended maximum of 500,000, and at the end of the day, after everything will be considered and gone through the wash, there will be a reserve fund balance of $550,000, and there's probably not a lot of room to move on this one, so you've done great work. Any other questions or concerns from the committee in regards to this one? I see none. Does that take us to the end of the business cases? Okay, so I think that brings us to, if I'm not mistaken, time for a resolution on the recommending to the board, does it say it? That we recommend to the board the following 2024 draft budgets be approved, and they are listed 1 through 16. Pardon me? Are you moving that, Director Abbott? Seconded by Director Segal. Any discussion, thoughts, concerns? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Not opposed, the motion carries. Who's up for, oh, I know, it'll be Mr. Farquhar. R2.
So this is just for the Parks Division. There are no supplementals, or sorry, no attachments or business cases for these areas.
But we do have changes.
Yes.
So I don't need to go through mine. There's 3 resolutions here. Could perhaps Ms. Boyd read what they are and inform everyone as to what's being recommended? This is direction of the individual directors and staff. So if you've got a list, could you maybe enlighten us?
Thank you, Chair. I have a list. Which one should we start with here?
Whichever you like.
Okay, I have Area B. That it be recommended to the board that the 2024 draft budget for Function 232 Community Parks Area B be amended by increasing requisition by $2,500 and increasing rentals washrooms by $2,500.
So how would we like to deal with that? Do we want to pass an individual motion and then pass the rest as a block?
That'd be
An
great. Thank you.
amended block?
Yeah.
Okay, so Area B, alternate Director Chance, what would you like to do? Move the recommended amendment? Do we have a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that item? Seeing none? All those in favor? Oh, hang on. I thought he was frozen. Director Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question, not particularly on Area B, but on one of the sentences in the report further on down, which
Can
says...
you hold on that and I'll just get this motion out of the way and then we'll come back to you?
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Go ahead, Director Wilson.
Yeah, the reflection, rather the sentence is on financial considerations at the bottom. Therefore, right, it says total requisition of 58,213 before supplemental requests are considered, blah, blah, blah. Hang on a second. Requisition figures related to supplemental items will be presented in a separate report and are not reflected in the above figures. Obviously, we're going to come back to that, but maybe this would be a good time to discuss those supplemental figures in conjunction with what we're doing here.
Could I have staff's recommended rollout of how we were going to be doing these? I thought supplementals were going to be at the meeting next week.
Next, through the chair to Director Wilson, supplementals will be discussed next week on Thursday in a separate meeting.
Yeah, I've got a concern as to how much those supplementals might be, though. And as we're discussing parks here, I would really like to see some kind of ballpark figure as to how much that might be? Because it's going to have a big effect. Supplementals always do.
I guess the challenge is we sort of laid out this calendar in such a fashion that we're doing core
Okay.
and recommending that, and then everyone will go into the meeting next week with a full understanding of what your base is as far as, and that anything that's supplemental will either be an additional requisition or sourced, funding sourced from another,
Okay.
operating reserve,
Yeah.
capital reserve, that sort of
Fair
thing.
enough.
So,
Fair enough.
yeah, I think we're gonna have to move forward on that basis.
Yeah.
Is
Okay.
that-
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, and is that a fair assessment of how we're approaching this?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Director Segal.
Be warned, I will be talking about it when it comes up, though.
I think we all will.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Farquhar. I've been ruminating a lot on when we went over the budget with my PAC, and the kids park program, the free program that happens in the summer, and that we talked about cutting the last week. Does that only affect Area A, or are there multiple areas across the CVRD that affects?
Mr. Chair, to Director Segal, there are 4 electoral area playground programs, that being in Mill Bay Area A, Shawnigan Lake B, Gobble Hill C, and Cowichan Bay D. So the effect of a reduction, and this is being dealt with through all 4 of the budgets, to stick within that 3.5%, we'll see a reduction of the playground program in all 4 electoral areas as presented in the budget for 2024, to reduce it from the full summer and reducing by 1 week at the end of summer. And we're working with the Kerry Park staff on that.
Yep.
And they're fully aware of that.
Follow up? So, yeah, I just feel like, I know that attendance decreases on that last week, but for the families that do go, I think it's so important for those kids. And then also just thinking that it's also funding like university students, giving them summer work. So I guess for Area A, I'd like to keep the full complement, the full summer program. Am I allowed to make that? Is that an amendment?
Maybe we should hear from staff as
Yeah.
to the feasibility of that happening.
So, Mr. Chair, it is feasible, and if the area director wishes to look at increasing that back up to the full number of weeks, I would suggest in the order of a $4,000 requisition increase to cover those costs be added to the budget for 2024.
Okay.
And Ms. Boyd is typing away furiously to get that resolution.
And it would be
in place.
along the lines of, that'd be recommended to the board that the 2024 draft budget for Function 231, Community Parks Area B, be amended by increasing requisition by $4,000 and increasing summer playground program by $4,000.
I love how prepared you are and that you read my mind. I did not prepare Brian that I was going to bring that up today. Thank you.
But of course, you're going to move
I'm
that
moving that.
recommendation, and then there'll be a seconder.
Yeah. And it was.
And it's been moved and seconded.
For Area A.
For Area
Did I say
A.
B by mistake?
Yeah.
It should be Area A.
We all
Area
do amend A. And now would you like to speak to it, now that it's on the floor?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm supportive of this for my community, and even if the other areas, don't take it on, I think at least having, so Mill Bay has Daloon Park and Huckleberry, at least we'll have something going on for the full complement of the summer in the south end, and I'm happy for Area A to be a part of that.
And I'm gonna be really cheeky and let you know that we run a similar program through Cowichan Lake Recreation Function 405, which, is a nice place for it to reside. Director Abbott?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Farquhar, in your written report, you mentioned that you're at about 58K or a 1.5% increase, but hold your breath, $168,000 is yet to come before this body. Is that the supplemental, or is,
Through the chair to Director Abbott, it would be multiple supplementals from that area. There's, I want to say 10? There's quite a few, and they're all small. So that 168 is not one, it's a bunch of parks. Like there's from 231 all the way to 238. There's a bunch of little ones.
so we're back to that earlier conversation that this will be next week's meeting. Okay, thank you.
Let's return to Ms. Boyd and the list of stuff that she's got for us to consider. Pardon me? Did we vote on that?
We did not vote on the
heck.
last motion. Thank you.
All in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Moving to area E. I have in front of me that it be recommended to the board that the 2024 draft budget for Function 235 Community Parks Area E be amended by increasing requisition by $71,125 and increasing transfer to capital reserve by $71,125.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Segal. Any discussion on that amending recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. We have Area F, that it be recommended to the board that the 2024 draft budget for Function 236 Community Parks Area F be amended by decreasing minor capital by $20,000 and increasing transfer to capital reserves by $20,000.
Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Chair. Second page. That it be recommended to the board that the 2024 draft budget for Function 238 Community Parks Area H be amended by increasing requisition by $10,000 and increasing transfer to capital reserves by $10,000.
Moved by Director Martman, seconded by Director Nicholson. Director Martman, please.
Thank you, and just thank Mr. Farquhar for the work on this, and through the Parks Advisory Commission. It came up at our last meeting about what this would be as an impact to the residents or property owners. And it would be a tax requisition of 64 cents per 100,000. So, yeah, it does increase our park requisition, but we do have a very valued community park. We're going through a community survey and input for it because we're renewing our lease. So we're anticipating down the road that we're going to want to have some funds set aside for that. So, yeah, I think it's one of those things where we're trying to plan for the future. So starting to put money in reserves. Thanks.
Director Abbott.
A question about the process that we're going through this morning. As we were reading these budgets, where was one supposed to read about all these amendments? Or is it part of our, as a director, we're supposed to be putting in amendments before this morning's meeting for if I sense that a park or some other area that we're going to discuss today, should those amendments have been put in place prior to the last evening when we got these reports?
Well, my quick answer is yes. Generally, staff are pretty good if they've had a conversation with you about the nature of your park's budget or any budget that you have sole discretion over, then they would put forward the appropriate work done with the 3.5% and the likes, unless there's something that would require an amendment like Ms. Boyd has just read out. So if everything is sort of good on your parks front, then you would have had a resolution for your draft budget as given under the original direction of the 3.5%.
So I'm just a little surprised how the process is unfolding. We've been comforted that we're at 3.5%. Supplementals are coming in next week, which will put us over 3.5%. But now around the table, we're getting these amendments. It's just, again, learning the process that.
And I hear what you're saying, and so for the most part, these are specific to increases or decreases to an individual electoral area, which may have minor impacts on that overall, I'm not going to use the word percentage, but that overall requisition number. So like in the case of mine, it was just, like, there's no impact on requisition. So we should keep in mind that as we're discussing this, if there's this increase in requisition, it will change that number, even though that number doesn't mean anything. So
You're drawing from a reserve to make the
No, I'm just allocating requisition from, in my case, it was an operating to a capital. So,
Mr. Chair, just ask Brian to make a clarification.
Please do.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, further to the query from Director Abbott, one of the elements is when preparing budgets under the mandate of the board, we're preparing the budgets to bring forward to the committee. And it's not bringing budgets forward that are necessarily hitting the mandate. It's also reflecting on what the overall core budget costs are being projected for the upcoming year. And not in all cases are we looking at budget increases. In some cases, because of bigger expenditures or major transfer to reserves, as was the case for the Area E budget for 2023, we're actually bringing budgets forward with decreases. Within the realm of the committee, it's the purview of the directors to then consider whether that's going to meet their mandate, your mandate for the budget and the program, the services for the coming year. So it's also appropriate at the committee level to have that discussion about potential changes, further changes beyond what the draft budgets being presented to the committee and the board are. And if there's opportunities in advance for budgets where there's a level of discretion that an individual director has, as the chair noted, there's that opportunity to connect with staff in advance to work on potential motions to be considered. At other times, it may be through discussion of the committee around the table to be making adjustments based on new information or considerations being considered at the table here.
and as a perfect example of that, I've just been made aware that there's who are they? The BC Conservation Foundation is applying to do a shoreline restoration program in the Cowichan Lake and River area. And that one of their mandates is restoration of riparian areas. And they have a keen interest, they do private, public properties, and there's a keen interest in dovetailing with any works that Function 236 Area F Parks would be doing in the newly acquired Little Beach Park. So I'm just giving Mr. Farquhar notice right now as we speak that between now and the time the budget is approved, if they are able to secure grant funding to implement this program again, there may be additional tweaks to the Function 236 to ensure that I can do that appropriate partnering to advance these works in that park. So,
Thank you for indulging my learning curve.
anytime.
And also, through the chair to Director Abbott, in the budget calendar, if you find like after today, there is something that you want to change in your parks and you talk to Brian and I, there's still time for you to make those changes because we don't adopt until February, so there will be another chance for you to bring something up if you want to.
Perfect.
All right, so have we come to the end of function, or of R2, and are there any other comments, Director Nick? We'll go to Director Nicholson first.
We have a motion on the table.
Another motion on the table that hasn't been voted on. Gee, slipping. Which one is it?
Area H, that'd be recommended to the board that the 2024 draft budget for Function 238, Community Parks Area H, be amended by increasing requisition by 10,000 and increasing transfer to capital reserves by 10,000. It has been moved and seconded. Thank you.
I want to say, is that in perpetuity? Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. We'll go to Mr. Farquhar first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be remiss if not pointing out there is one further motion that was not captured, and I'm looking for Director Wilson. I'm not seeing him, but through earlier discussions and emails going about, there's one
I'm here.
further
Hang on a
recommendation
second.
that was put forward.
Sorry, Brian, I am here.
Okay, go ahead.
This is noting the one with respect to looking at a bike rack. Director Wilson, shall I read that one out for you?
Yes, please, if you would.
Mr. Chair, that it be recommended to the board that the 2024 draft budget for Function 233, Community Parks Area C, be amended by increasing transfer from operating reserves by $2,500 and increasing minor capital by $2,500. This is specific to a new bike rack proposed for the Cobble Hill Common.
And that's a one-time cost out of operating reserve that won't cause a bump.
Yep.
Would you like to move that, Director Wilson?
I sure would. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
seconded by Director Segal. Any discussion on the bike rack? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Ms. Boyd, do we have any more?
Well, I'd like to approve the whole thing in the slate as amended.
All right, R2. Recommended those items listed as amended. Moved by Director Nicholson. Oh, wait, yes?
I would like to ask some questions about Bright Angel Park.
You would. Excellent. You know what? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So I've noticed that the capital reserves and operating, maybe you could just explain to me what's in the operating and capital reserve? It seems very low to me for a park like that.
Through the chair, so the capital reserve is 20,000, it's at 20,000 at the end of this year. I'd have to look in to see why money hasn't been transferred into it. And the operating reserve for 281 is sitting at 32.
So that's very low for a park like Bright Angel Park, I would think. And I'm just wondering if it doesn't look, I can't do percentages. What is the percent increase on this 2024 number?
I'd have to, do you have that one up there?
2.7. And then supplementals.
So
Yeah.
2.7.
Mr. Chair, through Director Nicholson, it's a 2.7% increase for 2024.
And were any supplementals related to Bright Angel Park?
Yes.
And yes, there will be supplementals next week.
Signage and trail mitigation.
Yes.
Okay, I'll leave it till then. But I do think that we should be really concerned about that capital number.
Might I suggest that participants in that have a side discussion at some point? As a matter of fact, once we approve this, I'm going to suggest we take a quick break to refill our coffees. So did we move and second the block yet? Moved, seconded. Any discussion further to the block? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Let's take 5 minutes, and the participants we don't need to do it today, but make sure you have that discussion about the capital reserve for Bright Angel Park.
I hope soon. Hello? Anybody? Can anyone hear me? Nope.
Mike, are you trying to say something?
Yeah, I'm trying to say, are we going to make a start soon?
Yeah, we are. We're waiting for that hamster wheel over there to get going so we can live stream.
Yeah.
All right, we're live. I'm looking over at the lectern and see two smiling faces there. Who wants to start off on R3?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. So Mr. Schooler is away today, so I will do my best to answer some questions. I have, if it's okay, I'm going to provide just a quick overview of where we are within the fire service generally, and I will also talk about some of the areas that are within this item within the budget here. So just some general comments here, and some of these are obviously won't be surprising to the committee here. The fire services that we have, I think we're very proud of the services that the departments and the firefighters and chiefs do provide, and I think for the value for the services they provide is pretty amazing. We've had over the years a number of reviews that have actually really demonstrated that the value that's provided and the volunteer hours that are put in it's fairly extensive, and we're lucky to have this group here to be able to provide these services that are very important to us. So But no difference to other services that are provided. There's some cost challenges, and we can certainly talk about those. And that relates to fuel, building and equipment repairs, and even internal allocation costs that relate to providing these services and the administrative side of the services, which is ever changing and demanding. You will also see within this section here that we have 3 areas that services that are provided by various municipalities within our region, and you'll see those costs also have seen some significant increases. And so not only what we're being faced with internally with our departments and the service that we're providing, but that's been noted in the various departments within the region. They've had some significant changes within their own services that they're providing, and we are certainly experiencing the same challenges with those increased costs. But I do want to emphasize again, and we've got some amazing chiefs that are very focused on making sure the service level is adequate and provides great coverage for the communities, while being also fiscally responsible. I mean, this group here, these chiefs are, every time we sit down, they're always talking about how they can ensure that the costs are in order there, and they're members of your communities, and that's really important to them. So I wanted to share that because it is brought up by the group, every time we do meet. I will note as well, I think the question is, there is no supplementals planned for this, for next week for the fire services. We've had some conversations, and, that they have found a real focus right now on meeting various requirements relating to the Fire Service Act, and that's a priority for them. However, saying that, we know that in the past, even this last year, there's been some opportunities and some changes. There has been a need for a boat at one point in time and another truck and so forth. So we are in the process right now of putting together a long-term plan, but we're not at that point yet. So we're going to be working with the chiefs to be developing that in the next year. So that'll be something in 2025 and beyond that we'll be bringing to the committee for review. Yeah, and so on that same note, just, the 2024 focus is facility asset management plans, fleet management, and so we'll be working through that, which that's why there is no supplementals this year, but we'll be working through that and having those in place for 2025 and beyond. I think the only other thing I was going to mention was I think you've been distributed, there is an updated list for the reserves, and Ms. Bowen will probably better be able to answer some of those reserves, so we can certainly answer those questions. I think in general, you'll see there's 4 business case items there, and happy to discuss it. And they're all, if you have a look at them, they're very similar. There's similar challenges. I talked about fuel, allocation costs, there's some other things, and so I just shared them. They are a bit of a package in the sense of where they are. Some of them, and there is, in cases, the chiefs have demonstrated or shown that there is a potential of impact if, with those not being considered. And so I just want to share that, but happy to answer questions or come back. If I'm not able to answer any questions, we can come back and go from there.
Okay, so I think we should get Ms. Bowen up there, and I know that I probably want to talk about 3 or 4 of these for sure anyways, so I'm going to suggest that we start at 1, go through, if the director for the area and staff are fine with it, just say you're fine, and we'll go on to the next one and discuss them. Like you said, I think there's 3 or 4 business cases. I think Director Nicholson and I want to bring up some discussion around Satlam. So with that, I look at function number 1, function 350. Was that one of those subject to a business case? Okay, let's crack that one open, and let me find it. Live meeting, where's that? North Oyster. Okay. Who wants to start? Mr. Postings, that's one. It's 15.92. It was, and I should just mention, Ms. Bowen, and the material that you just printed out, don't let Lake Cowichan see it, because it looks like there's a whole bunch of contract money going to them that they don't deserve. So, function 350.
I could briefly speak to this. So,
Sure.
I mean, I think the biggest impact in this particular one is the benefit of having a new facility is fantastic for the community there. However, one of the challenges is mostly relating to the maintenance and ongoing costs, and that's been very evident. I've spoken with other directors about this item where we add these new facilities, and sometimes there is not enough consideration for the ongoing maintenance, which is quite extensive. And so we will, like I was mentioning, we do have a plan to come back, especially for any new facilities in the future, to have a plan that will allow us to maintain these at an appropriate level so we can get the full lifespan and beyond. And so what this particular one, 350, is, it's focused on the higher cost of the maintenance for that particular facility there, and making sure that we can ensure the long length of the facility there. So happy to.
Director Martman.
Thanks for that, and I do have a couple of questions. They're not terribly, hopefully not terribly difficult. I do understand the need. I had a good, long discussion with the fire chief as well. And the questions are more just making sure I understand the full impact, because I'm not sure what the final number is if you include this for the requisition for the 2024. And that's one question I would have. And the second one is, there's mention about potential grant funds. I wanted to talk or ask, are we in any way able to position to be able to access grant funds as they come available? Or are we, because I'm so concerned that we're restricting ourselves to 3.5% that we're just not going to have the capacity. But I want grant funds, sorry.
Ms. Bowen?
Okay, so through the chair to Director Martman, I can answer the first question. As for the grant, I'm not sure, as Mr. Schooler was the one that wrote the report, so I'm not sure where his, on that. So last year, the requisition was 534,000. We did ask everybody to do the 3.5, and then if they needed more, we did another budget, which we didn't provide to everybody. So it would go up to 619,928. So that's what the 85,000, I think it was, in increase is from what 2023 was to the new balance of the 2024. And the amounts that are on the year over year is what we asked them to do to the 3.5. Because we kept that at the 3.5 is what we were asked and mandated to do. And then we were talking to the departments, and then they would do a separate side budget if they needed to be over that. So then if you decide to go with the higher amount, it was less work on me to have to move stuff around and update balances.
Thank you for that. And for a process, I could move the recommendation if I have a seconder and speak to it? Or do you want to do this later?
I'm thinking we should do that because there's going to be like half a dozen or 3 or 4
Right,
anyways.
okay.
So
So if
Go ahead.
I'd like to move the recommendation, if I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Seconded, go ahead.
So I just want to, for those that will watch this proceedings or have a chance to listen even, this is, this is a critical service, and I just want to give a shout out, and I'm sure we all want to do this for our fire departments. They just are the heart of the community. And I just, the time they put in just for the training, let alone doing the responses, I think the way I understand the firefighters of our community is that they go out and they do training around all different communities. So we're into the regional district of Nanaimo, town of Ladysmith, all around, and they come back and go, we've got a really good place in North Oyster. We've got great equipment, we've got great staffing in terms of the officers. We have, a facility to be proud of. And so I think it's one of those things, as you learn, it doesn't necessarily come cheap, but I think this is what you give to the heart of the community to keep it alive. So anyways, just a shout out to all those firefighters that are working so hard. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion is carried. So I'm going to just suggest that we ditto what Director Martman has said for all the further ones, and that unless you really want to, or you can do it at the board meeting and we could make that meeting really long. So I think I echo your remarks. Just, put my community's name in a couple of spots. Director Segal?
So can I speak to number 6?
We're going to go through in order.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So Massachi is next. That is, let me just close this one, go to the next one. Shoot, I got too many tabs open. Massachi, that's a business case. We are sitting at, let me just race through here, sorry, 8.26. I wanted to just confirm, so once again, they're seeking grants, they're doing all of that. We got a little bit of money in the kitty, and the 8.26 is basically keeping the doors open and the lights on, right? Yeah, I wish I could help more, but that's the number, so I'll move that. Seconder? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item, Couch and Lake. I just have a question of staff. Every once in a while, the directors ask to have a meet with Couch Lake Fire Department folks, just to be sure that they're not running amok. So I would like to ask maybe Mr. Postings to arrange for Director Deck and I, or alternate Director Tatum, to just have a quick general budget meeting, and I'd be prepared to move this number at this point, but it's a good idea. I haven't had a meeting with them in several years, and I think it's due. So with that, Director Abbott?
Second, but I do have a comment.
I haven't moved it yet. Alternate Director Tatum? I said I'd be prepared to, I didn't though. Somebody move it. Thank you. Second. I'm confused. Who wants to make a comment first? Alternate Director Tatum or Director Abbott?
You mentioned don't show this to Lake Couch, and what is that reference to?
Oh, there's a cut and paste where a bunch of contract ones say that there's money going from this contract to Lake Couch, and then they should go to Lady Smith, or it should go to the city of Duncan, or whatever, that's all. It was a kind of an inside joke that we didn't have to let all of the public know about, which they do now.
I just wondered, we're approving something that Lake Couch is approving?
No, we're approving our contribution under contract to the services provided by the town of Lake Couch, and then references in there that they've approved their budget. We're not gonna change their budget, but we contribute to it.
And the number here is what we contribute.
Yes. They, not you. Your seatmate next to you and my taxpayers. Alternate Director Tatum.
Thank you. I am also, I'll comment on UBO while we're here, if that's okay. I'm okay with the UBO one. I'm just trying to understand, in Area I, we have both UBO Fire Department and Couch and Lake contribution. And as Director Abbott noted, that there's approval by the Lake Cowichan Council on a pretty substantial increase, and I'm kind of curious what that big increase in expense is, and I guess how is it that, how do we get, being split between the two departments, how do we get to comment on some of those
Do you want to take that, Tracy, or?
I'm just trying to follow along which one he's thinking.
Okay, so let me jump in here. So, the town of Lake Cowichan provides firefighting services for electoral areas FI and the town of Lake Cowichan. The town of Lake Cowichan approves the budget, we just pay the bill. So that's why I had mentioned asking Mr. Postings to arrange a meeting, because while we don't authorize the global budget that the town of Lake Cowichan, approves for their fire department, we pay for part of it. So while we are approving what the component that Area F and Area I pay for the services we contract, we don't have any say over what the overall budget is. So that's, Mr. Postings will arrange a meeting, either you and I or Director Deck and I will go, and they'll say they're buying a truck or they're improving this or doing that. That's how they reach the number. So it's almost like the library board, they send the bill and we pay it. We'll get to Yubo when we get to Yubo.
So, further to that, is there an explanation why there is a $73,000 increase here in the Cowichan Lake Fire Department's budget?
Through the chair to Director Talon, I'd have to go back and look at the file. I believe it was because they were moving from an outside contractor into a new employee within their fire department, but I'd have to look that up again to see if that was the fire department, because I'm dealing with all of them. And I think that was the one that they were moving stuff in-house.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Posting?
Yeah, and through the chair, very similar to the other, what we have heard and been advised, very similar challenges related to additional costs, fuel, facility costs, all those very similar to our departments. They're seeing that, and obviously that gets passed through the contract to us, so they've identified a number. And through this meeting is one item where we can actually get down into those details and find out what those particulars are, and maybe there is some opportunities to look at some savings in the future. Maybe there's some opportunities to coordinate some services, but right now, the way it's set up is it goes through their budget process, which one of the challenges is they've just started their budget process as well, so the numbers that they provide us, most are probably aware that they can fluctuate a little bit because they're just going through that process the same as we are right now, so, but these are the numbers they provide us at this time. Yeah.
And I could say in the past that when I've had meetings with staff and their chief and staff, that they've been fruitful and we've come away with a clear explanation as to, why there are certain increases and the likes, and they're always generally very justifiable. So, but once again, this is one of these, they send us the bill and we got to pay it. Ms. Bowen?
So, through the chair, sorry. So there's also on this one, with the 3 fire departments that we deal with externally with the contracts, it's always based on a year lag. So then when we actually get the actuals for next year, there may be that what we pay them this year is actually over or under. And then this year, there's an additional almost 16,000, because what they predicted last year when we did budget, it was under what their actual costs were going to be. So then when we get the bill for this year and move forward, we actually have to pay a bit from the previous years.
Go ahead.
I understand and appreciate what everybody's saying here. It just seems to me that, a lot of the other departments are at their 3.5% increase. But when you look at Cowichan Lake, it's a 20% increase. And it may be completely justifiable. All I'm saying is, it would be nice if there was at least an asterisk or something that it said, oh, the reason why this is a 20% increase in this item is because of this reason. So it's hard to understand if it's justifiable, if it's just a number, that's all. It would be nice if there were some kind of an explanation, but I don't know if that's part of the process or not.
It hasn't been they're not bound by our 3.5%. They have their own mandate to their council, so.
And through the chair, they don't always give us the exact details of what it is either. They may just say, oh, it could be this, or lump it in with a number, so it's not always as detailed as what we could do with our own budgets to say, oh yeah, well, we know this consultant we're not using anymore, or we're changing this or changing that. We don't always get that detailed of information.
We moved and seconded this one, didn't we? We didn't vote on it, though. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We have Saltaire now. That's a contract to the town of Ladysmith. Anybody want to move that one? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Satlam. That's function 354. Director Nicholson, would you like to start us on this?
Well, I would just like to move that we increase the amount going into capital reserve by $26,000.
Okay.
And that being increasing the requisition accordingly.
So that's kind of like a supplemental above what we see printed?
Yeah, the current, what they've provided is within the 3.5%, but I don't believe we're putting in enough for capital reserve. And I could speak to that more eloquently when I get to Eagle Heights, because unlike $70,000 increase, I've got a $130,000 increase because it's a contract with Duncan, and I believe that's in part because they're not doing they haven't done good asset management. And so, that's a huge bump that's for our area, and I think it really speaks to we should be taxing for the cost of these services, and that includes capital reserves for maintaining or replacing our buildings and so forth.
So I'm just reading this fresh. So the balance is 242,000 in operating, and have I got the right one? Satlam is the current balance is 242, and the capital reserve balance is 1.136. Those are current numbers.
Yes.
And go ahead.
So, through the chair, yes, those are correct. And then this year, also in the budget for 2023, we'll be transferring another 135,000, which is what brings it up to the 1.271 in that account. So then in 2024, they also budgeted to do another 135,000. And if Director Nicholson wants the additional, we'll add the additional 26,000 on top of that for 2024.
Do we know what I don't have the 5-year in front of me, but what the anticipated, is it in the next 5 years for the anticipated hall replacement? Yada, I didn't say yada, yada, but the anticipated expense for hall and that sort of thing?
Mr. Chair, we don't yet. We are, in 2024, we will be completing the fire service review.
Yep.
That specifically is going to talk about, the requirements for the fire hall. We will likely not get into the detail of a cost replacement. That will be following the fire service review. We would need to determine, the fire service review advise what we need in the sense of service, area, location, equipment, and then what will happen is those results will then define what is needed to be constructed or renovated at the site there. So we don't have those numbers right now. Likely that'll be probably early 2025 that we'd have that.
So my concern is we're forecasting out to 2028. We do know that, what was the overall cost for the North Oyster Hall? Wasn't it 2.5 million? 5 years ago, it was $2.5 million. So, Director Nicholson's wise in suggesting that in addition to the capital reserve, I don't think it's enough. Well, really, if we were sitting at one point, oh, shoot, I gotta go to the bottom for that, or no, it's on here. We're sitting at, 1.2. We're gonna need 1 million between now and, say, 2030, whatever. So we're halfway to our goal, and we need 1 million, and we're putting in 150,000. So, and the cost is gonna be even higher. So, I don't wanna, bloat the budget, but is there, do we have any ballpark as to what so that we can, make a wise decision today?
Ballpark, probably, it'd be difficult to give a number at this time. However, I think based on replacement and asset management plans, anything in relation to an increase is an appropriate, decision. If it's 25, if it's 50, like the more money in there right now will allow the ability to address what we know will be coming down the road. I mean, we're looking at the most recent couple of fire halls that I'm aware of that are probably more of this scale and these are a couple of years old, but 4.5, 5 million. There is potential grants that we would be looking at for sure. There's contribution agreements that for various developments that may have to contribute as well. But having this reserve available would allow that process to move a lot quicker and make sure that it's built to the level of what the fire service plan will identify. And so that's the key there is what that fire service plan is. I think coming out of the fire service review, we will have a better idea. So sometime middle of 2024, we'll have a number that will say, this is the size of the site that you're going to, building that you're going to need. So we're probably 6 months away from that. It won't have a cost breakdown because that's not what the fire service review does, but it'll provide the details and we can then go around and there's other fire halls that are being built and we could estimate it based on that size and have a closer number prior to next budget round for sure.
Well, 160,000 doesn't cut it, but I don't want to give sticker shock to the users of the service, so I'd support Director Nicholson's resolution, but I think that we should be, smart and get it to a higher number sooner. Director Nicholson.
Well, I think we could, I think that, I wouldn't mind taking it up to $500,000 overall requisition, because I think you can certainly explain that to the community, and it's not that much higher than most large fire halls are paying. So that would be like a $75,000 increase on the capital reserve front.
I love it. Okay, so moved and seconded that are we talking about just the total requisition? Total source of funds equal, how do you want to word that?
To the chair, to Director Nicholson, just so I know, you want to make it 500,000 or you just want to add another 75 to the thing?
Either way, it's about the same.
Yeah, it's about
Yeah,
the
but
same.
it's just for wording, because like I can't make it 500,000 as requisition, so then it would be 75,000 something change that would go through to there. Okay.
Yeah, increase requisition by 75,000 to go to capital reserve
Increase the requisition up to 500,000 to go to capital reserve.
with the additional amount to go to capital reserve.
With the additional amount to go to capital reserve.
Yeah. We're both going to have to be out there defending that. Sure. Look at their operational costs now, and they've got a brand-new hall, 5 years old. Okay, any discussion?
Well, while you're at it, look at Cowichan Bay Improvement District. I think we're talking 14 million.
Right?
So I welcome them to petition the CVRD to be taken over before they do much more than break ground.
Same taxpayers. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thanks for that commentary, Hillary. That was cinched it for us. Next item is Malahat. Is that a business case one, or are you happy with it? Okay, Director Segal.
My first question is just, did we just vote on an amendment, or did we vote on number 5, the Salem?
We voted on
It
Saddle.
was the, okay, sorry. Yeah, so I have a question for Mr. Postings. I'm happy to support this, but I just want to check in because that facility, when I first came on, I went for a tour. It really has so many deficiencies. There's struggle to meet safety standards. Like, is this adequate? Would you like more? Like Allison seems pretty attuned, sorry, Director Nicholson seems pretty attuned to her fire hall. I'm looking for that kind of advice from Malahat.
Through the chair to the director. Yeah, so we did complete the fire service review for the Malahat late 2022. So we've been working through various internal operational requirements in the last year. We are planning to come, we have a report that will be coming back to the board that talks about next steps relating to the facility. And that is anticipated probably in January. It is January. Like, I know that I've seen the report, it's been drafted, it'll be coming in January. We also, I think it's been mentioned, there has been conversations with a site in relation to the Shawnigan interchange. I believe that's the area there. So we are having some conversations with the province about what that looks like. Is there a possibility for, because that was a preferred site location for the potential future fire hall. So we're a little bit early. I think I think what we just talked about for Satlum, one of the challenges for the Malahat is there isn't significant reserves there right now. And there is, in this particular case, I think it's about $44,000 that's being put away, 42, is that correct? 42 that's being put away right now. And so that day will be a challenge when we're ready to move forward, but we want to bring the plan forward to allow an understanding of what that might look like, and so that'll be coming in January here. So we're trying to get the timing of it, but it's probably looking 2025 to look at any sort of facility improvements. But we're also, there's other discussions relating to contribution agreements. So there is some funding that you're aware that has been that could be and likely will be available. So that is a benefit for this future facility. But right now we don't have a big reserve for sure to be able to actually move the project forward if it did come 2 years down the road where it is. So it's tough to answer, but I'd say funding would be beneficial in the reserves at this point in time, but really it would be not as much on the maintenance, it'd be long-term replacement planning.
How much?
Well, I guess I'm just wondering if we can maybe discuss offline and then I can bring something up at the board or whenever this next comes up. Tracy, you can.
Through the chair to Director Segal. So there will be time in January and February because we will bring all of the stuff. All the regional stuff will come in January. Then there'll be a meeting where we'll bring all of it back to you guys to have one final say of, okay, where do you want changes? And then I bring back the bylaw. So at that final change in February, that's where you'll get your last kick at the can to tell me if you want to make a change before the final bylaw is done.
Then I'll move the recommendation.
So before you do that.
Oh, okay.
So might I suggest, and this is just about positioning, so we kind of did saddle them on the fly there, but more than appropriate, and I think it's more than appropriate in your case as well. So the question that I would pose to you is when we're having those discussions in February, January, doesn't matter, do you want the ability to put money into capital reserve baked into the numbers that we're discussing at that point? Or do you want to try and convince your colleagues at that time that you really need to put some money in capital reserve for Malahat, and they're all going to be, or there's a good chance they might be reluctant to want to see numbers go up at that point. So it's a question for you to contemplate. I think maybe putting some in now might be advantageous.
And do you and your expertise have a suggestion of what a number would be?
Well, I turned to staff, like the overall capital costs are gonna be, like, we're talking 4.5 million to 14 million, and they've currently got a few $100,000 in there, so, but the question would be, you know, starting somewhere. What's the overall budget requisition for this one? I'm just sort of quickly going through. How much? No, I'm not talking percentage, I'm talking about operational costs. So your requisition's $235,000 recommended for this budget year coming up. You know, you could easily be sitting at 300,000, but that's a big number. But it's only adding another $65,000 to your capital reserve. So, but it's at least starting the ball rolling of a series of increases that will need to take place in order to finance a new facility.
Just remember that this one has a business case, so they're asking for an additional 10,000 on top of that 235. So they've asked for more money, so that's, if you're approving this and then adding, that's kind of what just so I know that what I'm recording so that I get the right amounts into the budget.
Yes, what page? Sorry, I'm in too many screens. Director Martman.
So just to give you some experience from how Area H ended up with a fire hall that we all love, there are rules around short-term borrowing, and that there's a certain amount that you are limited to, that you can make decisions as a director and as a board is my understanding. And so we didn't have to go out to long-term borrowing. Can you just walk us through, because I think it gives you an insight that, you know, if you can get enough into your capital reserves, and then you can use short-term borrowing to offset the rest of it, then you have a lot more flexibility. Maybe speak to that.
Through the chair to Director Martman. So long-term the only difference between long-term and short-term borrowing is short-term borrowing, you don't have to go out to the public and do everything.
Consent.
Long-term is a bit more to it, takes longer, you have to get consent, but 5 years and under, if you want to borrow, you come back, you put it in the budget, we borrow for it, and I bring a special report to the board that I have to have the motion so that I can just send it to MFA to borrow. There is no limit, from what I've been told. It's what you want to borrow and how much you want to tax your taxpayers to pay back that short-term debt. But again, it has to be paid within 5 years, so there's that to take into consideration. The other one is that if it's for equipment, then it's like a mortgage. It automatically starts taking off the payments right away, payments and interest at the same time. Short-term debt for buildings, it's like we make a payment once a year, and then the interest has to be paid monthly, so, yeah.
So to add to that, though, the short-term borrow option is generally, from what I've experienced in the past, is that pressure relief valve. So when you're in project and you've got the additions and you wouldn't say cost overruns, but that ability to go and borrow for a proper completion of a project, that is quite often the tool that's used. But after saying what I said a few minutes ago, where are you and the community at in regards to the discussion around the need for a new facility? Because if you feel that you're in a place where it's justifiable, Satlam is clearly in a place where they know that the facility is required. I know that Malahat is as well, and that you won't get the sticker shock if you start that process of saving for your down payment for the new facility. So that's an important question to consider.
I'd also say, when you look at all the other requisitions for fire services, they're all, well above 400,000. So for them to expect to get fire service, you need to get it up.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to approve the published supplemental? You've moved that?
Yeah, I'll move it as is.
Seconded? speak to that, or are you good?
Just that, yeah, I need to talk more offline with staff about the long-range plan for this new facility.
Okay, good. All in favor? Any opposed? Great. Next item, Eagle Heights, Director Nicholson.
I'd only like to add, I would love to have a conversation with the Duncan folks. That's never happened in my time here. And I've asked for it several times, so see where that goes.
Don't we know someone from City of Duncan? All right, Director Abbott?
Just an update or clarification. Coquisala Village is looked after by Eagle Heights. That's why we're in.
Yeah.
But, well, I'm asking because I see we get taxed, and that is the case?
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Posting, you turned the mic on for some reason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think this is very similar to the, I think we'll set up a similar conversation. I mean, I certainly, in this particular case, there have been some increases. They have, the City of Duncan has moved to a full-time paid fire chief. That's as of this year. And there's some equipment that they've recently purchased, so there's definitely some, but I think we can, we'll begin those conversations with all three of these organizations to understand where these costs are, where they're gonna, what they look like in the future, and maybe, like I said earlier, opportunities, so.
Moved, seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Honeymoon Bay. We got a 7.57. 357. I think we got some money in reserve here. I don't think we're replacing any fire halls in the next little while. Oh, this is updated.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this one also is what, I think this is the last one for what that does have a business case attached to it.
Okay, I didn't get to this in my reading, so balance of 150. What's the min max on this? Right there. Oh, no. Where's the min max on the? I'm looking. I can't see it. Sorry.
The min-max?
Yeah, on
It's
operating.
27 to 53.
Oh, there it is.
27,000 to 53,000.
And they've got 158. So is there anything that you know of that would be keeping that in the operating reserve as opposed to capital reserve? There's 105,000 surplus in that crosshatch area on the whiteboard.
Not that I'm aware of at this moment, but Rob, I would have to talk to Rob about that.
Okay. I'm comfortable with this, but I want to make sure that we're transferring an appropriate amount. Like I'd be more than comfortable if, like I said, there was 105, if 50 was transferred, if they had some reason for keeping an additional amount in the operating reserve. I'm not aware of any, but if you could just make a note of that. And could I get someone to move as presented? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And we get to UBO. And who would like to talk to us about UBO before we go to alternate Director Tatum? There's no business case,
Yeah,
so
Mr. Chair, yeah, there's nothing.
what
no,
function number is that?
358.
358. Let's pull her up here. 358, Fire Protection UBO. Alternate Director Tatum, you had some questions of staff.
It seems like a very reasonable increase in budget. Based upon some of the other comments, I would wonder too about if there is sufficient funds being committed to reserve. And whether or not that should be looked at over the next
304, 745. Yeah, you guys got $1 million socked away.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Mr. Chair, so I
Yep.
mean, at this point in time, the capital reserves currently are sitting at 745,000, so it's fairly significant. So I would say at this time, it's okay. I know in conversation with the chief there, the site or the facility does have I don't have top of my head the exact lifespan, but there is, it's not similar to Satlam and Malahat where we're at a, conversation about replacement. However, I think the general comment I would make, it goes back to most of the halls there. We're still in that early phase of that asset management, and we need to, as we work through these condition assessments and the replacements, 25-year replacement, we'll know more. But in this particular case, because there is such a significant reserve, I think it's in a good place right now.
Well, unless you need new truck, there's $1 million. So, I think informing the director and the alternate of the state of the asset management would be important. And would you like to move this
Yes, I'd move that we accept this
as presented?
preliminary, yes, as presented, yes.
Seconded by Director Abbott. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And does that take us to the end of section 3? Anybody want to grab a muffin, or should we bang on to number 4? Okay, let's keep going. Number 4. Ms. Boyd, what do you got here? Sports bucks.
Report from the Finance Division regarding 2024 draft budgets, grant functions for nonprofit organizations.
Well. Ms. Bowen?
So this is the one, this report has all the small grants that are little areas that we give money to. They provide us information with statement of what they requested for requisition of what they were doing with their stuff for last year and this year. So it's not, it's actually gone down a bit, which also, as you see that it goes down, it's because it has in it the Sportsplex, which is part of
Regional
Regional
Rec.
Rec. And we are in year 2 for budget. So they are now only 1/3 from there, 2/3 comes from the Regional Rec. So that's why those are such huge decreases from last year to this year. That's why it looks like this area went down. A lot of the granting functions that we give money to, there's not a lot of increases, but a lot of them ask for the exact same that they had last year.
Question. So, these little oddball Area F, Area I ones, are they not captured now in Regional Rec? Shouldn't they go away?
The Couch and Aquatic Center and. yeah,
480, 481.
Yep, 480, yes, so the Couch and Aquatic Center ones, because they're part of Regional Rec, next year they will be gone. Sportsplex will be gone. The Frank Jameson, that will be gone. 2025, yeah, so like 2024, so you'll have one more year of a 1/3 kind of.
So we're in the 2/3 year now,
The flux, yeah.
and those go away. And the disposition of those functions when they're zeroed, do we
Have
get rid
not,
of them?
we have not.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's enough.
I know that is something that John and I we have it on our plate, but it's like we're trying to get through the first year, second year, trying to get all of that organized and that to see what will happen with those functions at the end. Because once they go down to no longer needing in the budget year for 2026, we will not be having any requisition for them in that year, because it will all go through Regional Rec.
Okay, and these are. So I see a list, I'm just looking at the, we have the list of 440 to 481, but then there's a bigger list that's the numbered ones 1 through 20. I haven't reviewed this in depth. Anybody else? Anybody have any questions about anything in particular? Alternate Director Tatum.
Yes, we were just wondering about Cowichan Lake or Cowichan Lake water protection.
Yeah, that's, I believe, an exclusively Area I function, and we would have to look it up in the budget. What number is it?
Yeah, and it,
Is it both of us? 482? 492. I know that there's one of them is a joint and one of them is a strictly Area I.
and through the chair to
Yep.
Director Tan, it's not requisitioned.
No.
So it was money that came from developers. I'd have to look back and see, and we have some funds sitting in there that slowly get used. Director Deck has contacted both myself and planning about it, because planning is the one that knows more about where all that money came from the developer. And it was used to help with habitat and water protection and stuff like that. Yeah, yes, yeah.
So thanks for raising that, because I think that it's not budget related. I'll bring it up after. Any other of these that are on the list that anyone would like to? I know I have one in that, I can't remember if it's the Cowichan Lake Senior Center, or is that even on this list? These are recreation and, is it not on that list? We have a flow through for the Catsa Historical Society and, am I going blind? I don't see it. And the Cowichan Lake, not community services. There's a few here that I don't see, and is it I'm not seeing them because are they gonna appear later? You know the ones I'm talking about? There's community services, there's Catsa Historical Society, there's the
Yeah.
senior center, there's all of those.
Yes, I will have to look and see.
Okay,
Yeah.
do you want a resolution on these now and we'll figure out where those ones are later, or how do you, or could you want to go on to the other ones and find out? I know it's only you.
If, through the chair, if you would like, we could deal with this report, and then on next Thursday, I could bring the report with the other ones.
Perfect, let's do that. Anybody have any items of note or for discussion in R4, which is 1 through 20? Director Martin.
This is coming from left field, so please bear with me. I'll try. And the reason is, it's about function 460, which is what Area H pays into Frank Jameson. And it's decreasing by $46,000 roughly, to offset the increase that we're gonna pay in regional recreation. So here's the left field part of it. I look at the graph that we get on, I think it's schedule for average home tax impact. And what I see is regional recreation has been sort of populated at the very high part of the graph. And so now when you look at it, it doesn't fit into the flow chart of the things that are being paid the most. So like general solid waste complex is at the bottom of it. So you get that nice long thing. So right now it's sticking at the top and it sticks out like a green thumb. And I'm just, so is there a way to reposition this so it is fitting into the category in the curve? And is this the right time to ask? Sorry. Yeah.
Through the chair to Director Martman. So you're talking about Schedule E, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that one is a very convoluted, hard schedule to do, because what we do is we take it from the recreation, or the requisition spreadsheet, which is,
Yeah.
and then in that requisition spreadsheet, we have it listed in a way so that when we do our tax notices, we have that information already ready for us to how we put it into the tax notice. So we take that same information out of that chart and plunk it into that and populate that report. So I would have to I'd have to do a whole new spreadsheet,
Right.
change the numbering so that I don't mess up my main spreadsheet, which I use for so many other reports and stuff that we do and stuff to the government, that I'd have to have a separate one. So it can be done, but again, there's me, myself, and I right now. So we were just worried about getting it on and getting the numbers correct, that we didn't have time to move stuff around.
So this is a good opportunity, this question from Director Martman, to just address changes to the budget process. And so I was up here to speak on another item related to that, but this is a good segue. So we'll take note of your suggestions. I think there's been some other feedback about Schedule E. It takes a lot of work to change Schedule E, but we'll definitely track it, and then we can, our window for making adjustments to the budget process is kind of between March and May. And so that's kind of when we want to do some revisions, et cetera. So one of those revisions relates to these functions and some of the other functions that have been mentioned, which are these contribution services, granting services, many of which have been around for a long time and were established quite some time ago. And we felt in our preparatory discussions that they all bore some need for review in a kind of a structured way. And so we're planning to do that review this spring in advance of the 2025 budget process. So a lot of the functions were, when they were established, the CVRD's portion was a significant and required portion of their operating budgets, and they wouldn't exist or be able to function without it. And a lot of them have grown into places where we're not sure how much they depend on our funding. And so it would give the directors an opportunity to review them one by one and make some inquiries and be intentional about keeping them at the funding level they're at or adjusting it, but we just feel that review is a bit overdue. And so we are going to endeavor to try and do that this spring when we prepare for the 2025 budget year. So.
Thank you for that, and it just occurred to me why CATSA and those guys aren't here. They're sub-regional, so there's other partners. So that would explain why they wouldn't appear on a EAS list, right? So further to what Ms. Mohan had shared, could we possibly structure that discussion in such a way that it be staff and directors? Because I think there's, yeah, everything you said is true, but there are some that it's like, don't touch that, and enough discussion had. So I think a lot of time and energy can be saved in that. So so we have 1 through 20. Did I ask if it be moved and seconded? Moved. Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. We are now at, what's the next one? R5? Okay, street lighting, very exciting. Go ahead.
Well, I was, Louise and Vanessa were here, because this is from their realm of, yeah.
Sure.
There's Louise.
Wow! She's psychic.
Did you feel us? Did you feel us? Oh, someone was talking very loud out there. So we're just out street lighting now. There's no, this one has no business cases with it. It's, everyone met the mandate. So it's, is there any?
Okay,
Yeah.
business as usual.
Usual,
I have a
yeah.
question first. In our printed papers, it says 561 is critical street lighting area F, and then when I go to, it says critical street lighting area E. So there's an anomaly there. I'm looking at, I've got 554 as Honeymoon Bay, but, oh, there's 550. So can I just ask for a general comment on the general health of these functions? Because we've sort of been on the edge, hydro rates going up. It's, you know, these need to be funded properly, and is the 3.5% going to meet not only now but future needs? And as the new technology that they put in, has there been cost savings for us?
Wow.
Sorry.
I've been tracking the budgets and try to foresee if there's going to be some increases. I can't say we have noticed a decrease in any of the rates for the new. These, of course, are the critical streetlights. Are they as well? And there's some,
Regular street.
all of them are here. I have noticed the ones for the ornamental streetlights. The hydro has come down for, I believe, 4 of them that we replaced LED lights. I don't think we replaced the LED lights in Cowichan Bay, but in Wilmot Road street lighting. But most of the other ones we have, and those rates have come down. The other ones, we try to just keep it up, just keep a small amount in reserves. That we don't have to do, when we replace lights for critical street lights, we just phone BC Hydro and they replace it and, bill us for that. For our ornamental street lights, we have to hire our own electrician to go out and do that. So yeah, I try to keep up with the increases, put 1 or 2% a year. But when we start requesting more streetlights, that's when we have to, increase the requisition for those types of ones. So, yeah.
Okay, so do we know if 561 is E or F? It's E? Okay,
That's a typo.
all right. So, status quo, good work. Thanks, Louise. Moved, second, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. When are we thinking lunch, by the way? Just after our 7, eh? But don't we have? Okay, so we have our 6 to do then, do we not? And is that Louise too, or Vanessa? Vanessa. Okay, so let me pull it up on the meeting thing here. Where is it? Close that. Go do that. Okay. Are you? Okay, utilities. What does it say? My apologies for not having read them in advance.
Through the chair to the board, this one is just under.
Ooh.
Did you have the stuff?
Come on, you've been waiting around all day. Come and tell us something.
No, they didn't, there was no major cuts in this budget to stay under.
Wow.
They did.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Thanks for all your hard work. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. R7, draft budget water services.
Yeah, there's some business cases in this one.
Yeah, okay, let's go to that.
That's fine.
R7, we have 617 and 690, I see. And anything else that anybody else wants to discuss. So do you want to start with Shelwood?
Sure, thank you.
Welcome.
So yes, Shelwood is a proposed 10% increase, so the amount is $2,500. And this function is very small. It's a water system with 30 lots. Very minimal operating reserves there. And just the need for the increase is due to a deficit in budget in recent years, as well as several water breaks that cost about $5,000 per repair. And the proposed increase is through the parcel tax requisition, I believe.
Is this yours? Director Martman.
Thank you, and I guess I'm looking at the $2,500, and I'm fine with the recommendation. I just was wondering if, you're just being very conservative there with $5,000 a break, and I think that place breaks. Are you looking that it might be needed to be a bit more than that, or are you comfortable?
There is, I'm not sure about if there's replacement required, but I believe, there is replacement that will be required of the water main and potential that we could upsize there, but it would be obviously quite a significant cost, so.
The rates in Shellwood are some of the highest in the region. Again, such a small system. We've got still debt associated with that one. So I'm just trying to, cut the people a little break and not go too high. But yes, we'll need some more. We have a new reservoir, we have a new treatment plant, we've done some work on the wells, but the distribution pipe will need some replacement in the future. So I'm just trying to keep heads above water with this one. Yes, it could go higher.
Yeah. So the proposed rates, annual rates per lot is $1,800 per year.
What are you thinking, Ben?
I'm going with staff and on this one. I know that they should feel comfortable, though, if they're feeling like it needs to be added next year, to come back with that.
So you want to move the recommended resolution? Seconded? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed, motion carries. Next business case is which? What number? Oh, that sounds like it's one of Kate's. Okay. 15. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you. So this increase is due to a request to, I guess in 2022, the requisition limit was reduced per parcel because parcels were added to the service area without increasing the max requisition limit. So this is just to put return the requisition limit per property to the 230 as it was in 2021. And there's also some additional operating costs due to iron and manganese treatment that's been added to the system.
Director Segal, what do you want to do?
I'll move for the recommendation.
Okay. Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. So can I just pose a quick question, hoping it doesn't take us down any rabbit holes, but just generally, operating costs and the likes are, I appreciate you brought everything in at the 3.5 or lower except for the business cases. Is there trends that we should be aware of? Director Martman has just said, okay, we're not this year, but next year we can be. Can you give us some comment on whether or not we need to maybe be contemplating increases for next year, maybe this year?
Well, I guess a big factor in operating costs would be things like energy and fuel costs, like hydro, gas for transportation, that sort of thing. So, yeah, 3.5%, how are costs of parts and supplies, those types of things, those are increasing a lot as well. Do you have any?
We have the ability to increase user fees too, and I didn't, because this is a requisition. There will be some user fees increases as well coming next year, and they'll be in the management bylaw, so we'll be bringing them forward. If any of the directors are interested in going through the systems, their own systems before this goes to the board or something, we'd be happy to talk to you about if we're going to be increasing user fees instead of these parcel taxes.
Okay, sign me up. Director Nicholson.
So the user fees would be based on the metering?
Well, we have water and sewer, so we have
I'm thinking water, sorry.
Pardon?
I'm thinking water.
We some years we raise one, next years we raise the other. So not every system. For example, Eagle Heights Sewer, there is no parcel tax. Arbutus Ridge, there is no parcel tax. So it's only user fees that we increase. Many of the other ones will raise user fees one year, parcel tax the next year. When properties are added to service areas, we can't go past the maximum requisition. So if an increase is required, we'll do it to the user fees. It's one or the other. This 3.5 was for tax requisition, parcel tax, so that's why we brought the reports forward.
And user fees, there's a base user fee for water for the base amount, and then the step charge. So the base amount we can increase that as well when we increase user fees.
I have a finance question in regards to, I think it's 662. It could be 661. So we've got two long-term borrowing. One is for the extension to the Sutton Creek water system. I don't think that's the one. I think we're talking 662. And that's strictly a flow-through long-term debt. And I'm looking at the requisition is 28.3. There's a surplus, is basically where it gets to. And I don't have the operating reserve numbers. It's probably at the bottom. Core budget, no increase. Hang on, I'm just scrolling through. So we have an operating reserve. Since this is strictly like a flow-through, my question is, why are we not applying any surplus amounts that we're taxing for directly to principal to pay this down sooner?
Through the chair so we have to, I believe this is the one where you requested that we do that so that we could pay it off. We have to look to see for long-term debt when we can actually do that payouts.
The windows that they
Yeah, we have to
provide
look at the
for it?
windows,
Okay.
yeah, for that. It's not like short-term debt where you can just put extra money on it whenever you want. With long-term debt, there's certain windows where we can actually pay it out early or make those extra payments. We would have to look at those ones to get that information for you.
Okay, fine. And just for those of you that the community actually asked to be taxed at a rate higher than the actual borrowing costs came in at. So we're taxing at the level that they requested, and then we will attempt to pay it off sooner. So, Director Nicholson.
I have a question, thanks. I have a question about Dogwood Ridge, and it doesn't look like we're putting much in capital reserves.
Through the chair to Director Nicholson. I don't, do you know how much? So I think it's the same scenario where their rates are quite high already, and so the only way we would be able to increase capital reserves is to increase their rates.
Right, but we know we have a problem.
Yes.
So it seems like it would be prudent to try and increase it a little bit, you know, just to start to get people used to the fact that they're gonna have to they would probably like to start paying now for something that's gonna be coming up soon.
Okay.
I would hope.
We can make that
Unless they're all
amendment.
gonna sell their homes.
I mean, this is probably common across the board, but again, it's the exercise of.
So maybe we should talk about that and then deal with
Yeah.
it later. Okay.
Any other items that are of interest or require additional comment? So we should have a bulk motion for the block, which is, am I mistaken, 1 through 24? Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Martman. Any discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We still have quorum. Okay. Can we squeeze another one in before lunch? We have drainage. Ms. Bowen?
There are no business cases with the drainage functions.
Okay. Kate, Director Segal moved and seconded. Okay, let's just let everybody process for a second here. I see Director Nicholson's staring intently into her screen.
Sorry, I can't see real.
You and me both. Okay, moved and seconded. No discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we dare? Do we dare? R9, what do we got?
There's one business case with R9.
Okay, let's have a look-see then. Hang on, R9. The Mill Springs. Didn't we just add 66 new users to this yesterday? Oh, it's not
Yes.
official yet, hasn't gone to the board.
Yeah, so, thank you. So, this is a proposed increase to the parcel tax requisition, but we do have a bit of an amendment here. There was, I believe, this was 30 parcels that we thought would be added to the service area before the end of this year, and they're not going to be. So we're proposing that that's reduced to the original amount of $109,600, and then we are adding the $12,093 to parcel tax fees. And those parcel taxes for the new 30 properties would be billed directly to the properties for the 2024 year, since they won't make the parcel tax for the next year at this point.
Do they have that
No.
in writing? And you're gonna provide it to them?
Yes, we can.
And we'll all
Thank you.
clearly understand it? Okay,
Yeah, I'd just like to add, this is the Winsong Place sewer that was going to be added to Mill Springs and then Brain Road. That was in June of this year, and I don't believe it's going to make the tax roll this year. So that it'll all be on next year's tax
okay.
roll.
So what function number is that? 813, you want a special resolution for that one in particular? Moved?
Mr. Chair. Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
well, okay, let's not move in second. Question, go ahead.
Just oh, hang on. Sorry, who's going?
Kate first,
Director
then you.
Segal. I'm just wondering, so then what's the percent increase? This report says 11%, but with that change,
Through the chair to Director Segal, I believe that the percent increase is the same, except that it's just that the account, it goes to a different account, because rather than being in the parcel tax roll, it will be billed direct. We'll have to send bills directly for the equivalent amount. But it is an increase in parcels to the service area.
What happens is our finance department, for example, these 30 lots that are going to be used in the service area, if it's a half a year, we'll send them half a parcel tax bill, and our finance department bills that, and it's a different function. It's called parcel tax, CVRD. It's not requisition parcel tax, so it's a different account. Those are for ones that come part, 3/4 of a year or half a year. They still pay their share, but it's done by a different means, not by the tax roll. So, so we're going to keep the same amount as the requisition, so that'll be zero, but there will be an extra approximately $12,000 in the parcel tax CVRD, so it's an amendment to this budget. The expenditures will stay the same.
okay.
Just maybe clarify.
Yep.
So what happens is, in order to be on the parcel tax roll, have the parcel tax applied to someone's tax notice, it has to be to the province by a certain date. And if it doesn't meet that date, it doesn't meet for us to get the stuff in February, for us to do everything to have the parcel tax review panel, so that in order to still get that money, we have to bill through finance those parcels. We get the information from Louise and Vanessa, and then we bill them out separately through our ARR system. So we still get the money, it's just, this year they won't have it on their parcel, on their taxes, next year they'll show up on their taxes.
A supplemental.
So I guess I'm just confused because yesterday, we brought in the 66 new users, so, but is it like that doesn't, because they haven't come on fully yet, this is the increase for the amount of operation costs currently, or?
Through the chair, the 66 users is in addition to these 30 that we're discussing here. But I believe, like, Tracy can correct me if I'm wrong, but the 11% increase is increase for revenue to the system. It is not a per customer increase. Because of the system is now larger by parcels, that there's more, an increase in revenue overall because there's more customers, not that each customer is paying more.
Oh,
Less.
interesting.
They're probably paying less.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. It's an increase, right, but the number of users is increased. So then, yeah,
The money
okay.
goes down. So
That
the
was my
amount of money-
question. I
Yeah.
thought if there's more people, it should go down, but okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
The amount per person may go down because now it's being spread out amongst more people.
Okay, so I'd move that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Was that the block of the individual one? All those in favor? Any opposed? Director Wilson?
Thank you very much. Let's see, I'm looking at 803 and 809, and there's no numbers in there. What's there
803, I
going
don't
on?
see 803.
Through the chair, those are two defunct functions, Twin Cedars and Cobble Hill Village, which is now 812, where they were amalgamated together in one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I figured that was probably what was going on. I see 812 there. So what are we looking at on rise there? 83, 85, 85. So that's within the 3.5 though, Louise, yep.
Yeah, we'll be probably adding more parcels to that service area next year as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm aiming for. Thank you very much. And also you can see Daisy's joined me in the background there.
So while we've got our friend Mr. Etherington in the room, so can I just, I'm trying to plan for a possible extension of, we're gonna have to rename it, the Missachi sewer, which is deposited in Honeymoon Bay, for the expansion of that or inclusion, that will be, I'm assuming by petition, if we are able to extend the service into Honeymoon Bay. Prior to that, have we done any costing for the, like a main line down South Shore Road? Could we be looking at feasibility of, like a feasibility study for that? And is that something that you could work into your work plan? Because I do know that there's interest from at least Strata 1339 to come on as a group. And so where would we be at? And is there any possibility of some of that being done as far as getting some Class C costs?
Yeah, Class C we could, but the one thing you have to keep in mind is the expansion of the disposal field and the treatment costs as well. It's not just extending the main, because one more drop of wastewater, we're gonna have to increase the disposal field and the treatment capacity, or the treatment capacity will help with the disposal field, but, so it's not just putting the main in the ground.
Right, and it's because we've got a couple of potential developments coming on stream, those are potential sources. And are we still looking at the slightly used plant being
Yep.
available?
Yeah, it's good timing. On Friday, we met with one of the groups, and those discussions were all brought up. So it's definitely not, it's very much in our back for our thoughts, and we're waiting to hear back from them and maybe the two developers talking together. But yes, the treatment plant will be available once Mill Bay is amalgamated with all their systems.
And we've made appropriate gas tax funds available for
We've
that?
got some.
Okay, good. That's all I need to know. Does anybody want to move the bulk of R9 as amended. Moved by Director Nicholson.
no.
Oh, no, yes?
Because I would like to talk about something.
You'd like to talk about which one?
820?
Oh, well, go for it.
Oh, I'm on. Sorry. So this is the Eagle Heights sewer system? And my understanding is that there's going to be a large capital cost coming up. So I don't think we're prepared.
Yeah, through the chair to Director Nicholson. Yeah, so part of the South Sector or JUB system that the Eagle Heights utilizes, it's shared with, owned by North Cowichan and Duncan, of which we are a customer. There is a proposed upgrade project to move the outfall. We don't currently have a price or a funding model. We don't know what that information is or what that request is going to look like at the time in order to start planning for it. There's some reserves in the Eagle Heights sewer system. But yes, that is a cost that's upcoming that we are trying to get the answer to that question. We have a meeting coming up shortly here about that, yes. And hopefully we'll have more information about what the expectations are about the cost of that project and how it's going to be funded by the users of the system.
Okay, so maybe I'll just leave it for now, but we could, both that water thing and this one, we should talk about before we finalize the budget stuff.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything on this from R9? R9 that they'd like to discuss while we've got all our experts here? Or do we want to have lunch? Okay, can I have a motion to move? Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Jeez, tell them to turn the mic off, then I don't have it on for me. Thanks. So that brings us to, so motion carried. That brings us to what, Ms. Boyd?
We have nobody in the gallery to ask questions, so let's move to adjourn.
What? Director Martman?
So, I'm just noticing in Prime Gov, we have something under closed. I'm just saying on Prime Gov we do.
This is a templated agenda, so unfortunately, that comes up on every agenda. We're trying to work with Prime Gov to remove that, so.
You want to close
You
session?
caught it once only. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move in second, adjourn. Moved second, all in favor? We're done.